You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter at Psych with Mike or like the Facebook page at Psych with Mike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Say that again. No. I tried to catch you, but you were too sagely. Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Mr. Brett Newcomb.
You're always messing with me.
No, I'm not. I'm not messing with you. I'm trying to get good, candid kind of conversation.
What's it like behind the scenes?
The lead in, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, but the reason that you said something really nice about me, and I was trying to get that on tape.
Because it's so rare.
It's so rare. And then that way I could play it back to myself.
And listen to it all the time. Yeah.
Over and over again. Because
by golly, people like me. Didn't somebody get famous doing that?
Yeah, he was a senator, and then he got accused
Stuart Smalley,
of Al Franken, and then he got accused of impropriety, and he quit, and then everybody said, you jumped off the wagon too quickly. And he's like, well, but you people told me to quit. Yeah. So now, life happens.
That's a solid psychological concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy the psychology that we are giving out in the show, then please go to psychwithmike.com, download a couple of episodes, tell a few friends, and share Psych with Mike with people that you know.
And if you don't, then don't.
Then don't at least say anything bad.
At least, yeah.
Because we talked about in a recent episode that may actually not air until after this one, but about how exposure therapy works and everything like that. And at the end of that, you said what?
I have a phobia about rejection.
Yeah. So everybody should be nice.
I have abandonment
to
issues.
Us because if they're not, then the consequences of that, it's not your fault.
I may abandon ship.
Yes, that's right. And I would not be able to carry on if that were to happen.
You and so many others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if I had that positive, affirmative message from you on a loop that I could listen to over and over again, that could really help me reparent myself. And reparenting is so important.
A very important concept in doing therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Because people often internalize messages from their parents, whether they understood them accurately, correctly or not. They internalize those messages, and then that internalized script causes them to stay in repetitive behavior patterns that keep them stuck and unhappy or depressed or anxious or whatever the focal point becomes for their existence.
And I think that both you and I can relate to that message very genuinely.
I'm 73 almost, and I'm still reparenting myself.
Right.
Maybe someday I'll get there.
I mean, your dad was an aggressive and abusive alcoholic, and your mom left when?
My mom and dad got together in World War II when he was 18 and she was 16.
Yeah.
And then they got divorced shortly after they had 2 children, and they got remarried, and then they got divorced again, and then my dad got married 3 other times.
Yeah.
So people were always coming and going.
But she was out of your life
until I was 21.
Oh, okay.
I went looking for her when I was 21.
Right. But she left your life when you were how old?
3.
When you were 3.
Yeah.
And you didn't know her.
No. I knew the family stories about her, but I didn't know her.
So you didn't have any real firm remembrances of her.
No, because up until 3, my understanding is you have like Kodak moments. You just have snapshot memories. You don't have sequenced memories.
Yeah. So people who say that they have these real firm memories of themselves as infants in a crib, I mean, I'm not going to argue with anybody over that.
But my interpretation of that would be it's a snapshot memory. Something happened around the moment they're remembering
the psychology
that caused them to remember it.
Doesn't support that.
Yeah.
So, and I've often said that we were raised by alligators. They laid eggs and then, left. And so we were really kind of mostly on our own. And again, there's no comparison between those two experiences. And I wouldn't say one is better than the other or that it's better or worse than anybody else's experience. But what it means is that we had experiences of our parents growing up that led us to not feel like we were parented in a very effective, very nurturing way.
No, but in my experience, in doing therapy for 35 years and in my own life, what I consistently find when faced with this concept is that there was some nurturing adult that gave messages of affirmation, affection, nurturing, teaching how to survive, because it's important that you survive because you have value, you have merit on your own. And if I didn't get that from my parents, or if my clients didn't get that from their parents, there's always somebody, a teacher, a preacher, a babysitter, a grandmother, next door neighbor, it doesn't matter. But if you look, you'll find somebody that fulfill that role.
If the person is able to transition that phase of life successfully. I mean, do you think that everybody, I mean, I would bet you there are people who have grown up who didn't have that or didn't have that in a way that you could identify.
Well, but then I think, so this brings us full circle. If I encounter someone that didn't have that, or we can't identify that ever in their life, then my challenge to them is to say, well, can you do it? Can the grown-up you nurture those wounded pieces of you that were not nurtured, that are still, I mean, that's the whole IFS, Internal Family Systems Approach concept as I understand it. There are parts of you that are not whole, that are not integrated in the whole, that need some attention and will demand it. And so you behaviorally act out, or you behaviorally experience some situation that is a direct result of one of those parts demanding attention. And if you can blend with that part as the nurturing adult, the accepting adult that says, I see value in you, I like you, I love you, I care about you. This may not be something I like, but you have value, then you can re-script the internal script that you hear. And that's what we do in therapy all the time. Therapy is about reparenting.
All of it,
yeah,
I mean, is really just some form of reparenting.
I think so.
And so the article that I'm going to post in the show notes with this is all about how to parent in a nurturing way, especially during the pandemic times. But I think that the ideas of this are relevant not to just raising a child, but to actually try and help people heal if they feel that they weren't parented, or maybe they don't even recognize it. But I think that these concepts are applicable not just if you are currently a parent raising a child, but also for those individuals who didn't get that kind of nurturing when they were younger.
I agree. And I think that's the underlying premise. For me to understand when somebody comes to my office and says, I'm in trouble, I hurt, my life is not working, can you help me? Is I want to look at the patterns in their life, and I want to hear what repetition cycle there is for those patterns, and get to the messages behind the pattern. And what I often find is that the messages of rejection, abandonment, shame, guilt, whatever, hostility, can benefit from a reparenting. If the individual in the room can approach themselves with more tolerance and acceptance and affection, more understanding and forgiveness, they can rewrite their life script and make different choices going forward, so that they don't continue to repeat, why do I always fall for an alcoholic? Why do I always fall for an unavailable man? Why do I always get into financial difficulties? Why can't I keep a job? There are patterns in your life that we can identify bad guys. Oh, you had a boss that was an SOB. Well, why do you always find bosses that are SOBs? What are you looking for? What are you seeing subconsciously or unconsciously that draws you to this situation,
Mm-hmm.
so that you get an opportunity to finish the unfinished business, to rewrite the script.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can conceptualize that in a way that you can take home and play with, you can rewrite the script. You can buy a whole new program and live differently.
So I have always said, and I'll throw this out and then ask you if you agree with this or not, that the most important foundation of parenting is to teach your children to love themselves. That if you do that one thing, I don't know that I mean, certainly I would like for you to be as good a parent as possible, but I think your child is going to be okay. I think they're going to be.
So I think that has to be different from what we call grandiose narcissism.
Well, okay, yes.
You don't want to embrace that.
Yes. I don't want them to be entitled.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction.
Okay.
Or qualifier.
So in my brain, that would never occur to me that you would teach them to be entitled. But yes, that's a good distinction.
I think we teach our children all kinds of bad things.
I think we do as well. But
entitlement is one of them.
But when I think about this idea of sincerely loving yourself, then that for me doesn't include a sense of entitlement. As a matter of fact, it would be anathema. Entitlement would be anathema to a genuine, sincere love of self, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think that entitlement is really an insecurity issue.
Okay.
And so if you generally love yourself, if you sincerely love yourself, you wouldn't therefore be insecure. Therefore, you wouldn't have a sense of entitlement. But I take your point, and that is a good distinction.
So how do you teach somebody to sincerely love themselves?
You got to train that early. You got to tell your children, that.
Okay, so it didn't happen early. I'm 73. Should I go to therapy now and learn how to do it?
Well, so then we have talked about that idea of reparenting.
Right.
So for me, the way in which you teach that, regardless of whether your child is an infant or you're a 73-year-old who is now thinking about not having gotten that when they were younger, is that you train people to be emotionally regulating in an effective way, to be able to identify their emotions.
Effective way, not affective. I'm asking because I'm not sure I heard you correctly.
Yes, effective.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, you have to be able to identify an emotion is the first thing.
Right.
You have to be able to label the emotion. I have to be able to express that to another person.
Feel it, label it, externalize it.
And then you have to be able to externalize
it.
Right. And I don't think that people really do a very good job of that. I don't think that we train that. And I don't think that we even do a good job of that in graduate school.
As parents in society, we reject certain feelings as having validity. For instance, anger.
Right. So here, let me ask you this.
You get a 2-year-old that wants to slap you because you tell him he can't have a piece of candy.
Well, hang on.
All right.
Big boys don't.
Interrupt. Cry.
Fear is a sign of?
Weakness.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
those are messages I learned.
I've been doing that forever. Well, you learned it, but I will tell you, I have literally asked those questions to 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And I've never, ever gotten a different answer.
Yeah.
And in human beings, the primary emotions, so these are the emotions that are pre-programmed in you at birth, that you would have no matter what else happened. And we can get into the weeds of what's a primary emotion, what's a secondary emotion. But primary emotions are glad, mad, sad, and scared. So that's the way your body will change biologically in response to environmental stimuli. Glad, mad, sad, and scared. So if big boys don't cry and fear is a sign of weakness, 50% of the human emotional spectrum is conditioned out of us through these messages that we grow up with. And everybody in our society, and maybe in the world, I haven't practiced in other parts of the world, but I've never gotten different messages from anybody that I've ever asked those questions.
So you're saying that emotionally we all have one hand tied behind our back.
Exactly.
By our parents.
That's right.
And that.
But by society, by just the messages that we get, right? And so if you can't experience, if you can't express those emotions, then you have to do what's called sublimate. You have to take that emotional energy and pour it into something else that isn't real, because you still have to be able to express it. So what do? We dump that energy, most of it, into anger. So we say anger's not good, but in my family growing up, it was literally okay to punch somebody, but it was not okay to hug them.
Yeah.
And so we then train people to believe that the emotions...
Toughness as opposed to vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we grow up and that's our emotional experience, then we're going to be invested in emotions that, number one, aren't real. Number two, are genuinely very, very anti-productive, unproductive to real human relationships. And we're not really going to love ourselves very much. And so that's why I think that training someone to love themselves is so important. And the way that you do that is by nurturing genuine, sincere emotional regulation. And that is identification, labeling, and expression.
Well, and I think it also involves positive affirmations that are genuine. As a therapist, if I'm going to give you praise, if
Right.
I'm going to validate my experience of you in a positive way, it
Right.
has to be genuine. I can't give you fake praise. Or as a teacher, and I think our society has gone into this whole damn self-esteem movement where everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets an A. We don't make any distinctions based on performance or ability. We don't allow or encourage our children to try and fail, because then they can learn what they don't do well, but they do better and make choices that put them on a path of success. I think that's a failure of the system, because we give them the wrong messages.
It is a huge failure, because do you know the best way to undermine an individual's self-esteem?
Give them a false message.
Reward them for something that they don't believe they should be rewarded for.
Not real. Yeah.
That is the best way and most effective way to undermine a person's self-esteem. So when we give participation trophies to kids who know that they shouldn't be getting that trophy, that is, as you say, a false message. And so what I've said, people say, okay, Mike, you're so smart. Tell us how to fix the problem. And I say, you know what? Stop keeping score. Oh, no, we couldn't do that.
Give them honest feedback.
We can't stop keeping score. I'm like, well, what's the point of the activity? If the activity is to grade you on whether you're better or worse, then do that, but do it honestly. If the activity is about everybody gets to go out and have a good time, then don't keep score. The score is irrelevant. But people can't wrap their heads around that.
I remember years ago, my wife and I joined a faculty volleyball league at the school where I taught. And we were playing volleyball against other faculty members one night a week. And we were there one night, and we were teamed up, and we were playing, and my wife was having a good time and laughing and teasing and just having a good time. Missed a couple of shots. And one of my dearest friends walked up to her and very quietly said, Phyllis, we're not here to have fun.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, we're all still good friends many years later, and she teases him about that all the time. We'll go out to dinner or something, and she'll say, Ed, we're not here to have fun. So,
but I think that is a pervasive message.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all about who's better, and we're going to rate that. And if that is the goal, then all I'm saying is, let's be honest. If that's the goal, then keep the score, but stop giving out participation trophies. You can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to keep score and we're going to grade everybody, but then we're going to give everybody a trophy, because that mixed message actually destroys self-esteem.
There are values in some of those messages that we need to think about, because if you have a child that's physically limited or emotionally limited or cognitively limited, and they want to be a musician or a basketball player, and you say, okay, I mean, we see all these feel-good stories on YouTube where the team gets this kid who can't shoot a basket and helps him shoot a basket, and the whole audience, even the opposing team, acts like they're trying to block the shot, but they don't block the shot. And he gets the positive, affirming, enhancing experience of shooting a basket and having everybody cheer for him. I think that's has validity and value and is a good thing, but I don't think it's universal in terms of every experience that he has. We can't just keep giving him fake experiences because, as you said, he'll know it's not real at some point.
Okay, and I agree.
And there's an adverse cost to
that. But then we have to identify what was it that he accomplished. So I have never
acceptance by the group,
any team,
affirmation of value.
I've never on any football team that I've played for not received a trophy. And that trophy was either hardest worker or most improved player. But I did not play in the NFL. I did not win best athlete trophy, but I loved the game and I worked harder than anybody else on the field, but I didn't have very much skill. Yeah. I optimized what I had, and I had a great attitude, and I was willing to run through a brick wall for my coach, but I was never going to play in the NFL. And no one ever said, you know what, Mike, if you work really hard, you might be able to make it to the NFL. And I'm glad they never told me that, but they respected what I was willing to do. And they gave me the appropriate, correct feedback.
That's right, because we need cannon fodder out here.
Exactly.
And you're willing to be cannon fodder.
That's absolutely right.
A couple shots and wear those other guys out so that our good guys
can. and that's exactly right. There were times when I'd get thrown into the game just to wear somebody out. Yeah. And I was more than happy to do that.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm blanking, and I feel so badly about it, on what you call the daggum sport. But I remember playing on a league. You go to a gym and there are white walls and a glass door, and you have the little racquetball.
Oh, racquetball.
Hello. Yeah. So I joined this racquetball league, and it was like 16 weeks. And I played in this league for 16 weeks, and I never won a game. I lost every game. I was the worst player. Absolutely. I had no capacity. At the end of the season, I got an award, a trophy, Miss Congeniality, because I never lost my temper. I never lashed out at anybody. I had a good time. And it was very genuine trophy. Yeah. They were saying to me with affection, we're glad you were here.
Absolutely.
Because we could all get victories against you or whatever. And you didn't make us feel bad about it. But I didn't feel bad about it. I mean, I was enjoying the exercise. I enjoyed being around the guys. And I know I'm not an athlete. I never pretended to be an athlete. But I thought it was nice of them to give me Miss Congeniality as an acknowledgement that we all knew that I was horrible.
Well, and
including me,
or not even that you were horrible, but that you were acting appropriately in the context.
In response to being horrible.
Well,
truth is truth.
Well, but I think it's important that we are able to acknowledge what is truth. And so when we're talking about parenting or reparenting, the important message is that every emotion is just as real and just as valid as any other emotion. Tears are actually
it's real.
Really
it's not necessarily
positive.
As useful. I mean, in the moment.
Well, I mean, if it's genuine, I mean, there are very, very few real reasons why a person should be angry, even though that's the most commonly
that's
demonstrated.
A judgment call. I don't know.
What is anger for?
It's an original issue equipment. We're born with the ability to be angry.
Right. So what do you get angry? Why do we get angry?
For me, I'm not happy about something. I didn't get my way about something. I'm mad about you.
Well, I don't think anger is because we don't get our way. I think anger is about trying to keep us alive. So when we perceive a threat to our environment, we get angry.
No, I don't know. I think it's an oversimplification.
Okay.
To me, the question becomes how functional are you? Can you experience that and process it and let it bleed off in a way that doesn't damage anything so that you can make better choices and have better results over time?
And I believe that most of our emotional responses are sublimated energy. That, if we perceive that someone has made fun of us, we're hurt. Then we express that as anger.
My wife makes fun of me all the time and I enjoy it.
Well,
we have a relationship
because you have that relationship.
Yeah, and it's solid. And I admire her quickness and her wit and her deftness in puncturing my little balloons, my ego balloons that I float out there for the world.
Which is totally fine.
Yeah,
and maybe serve a purpose. But what I'm saying is that we don't do a very good job of identifying what is the actual emotion that is being created in us, and then we sublimate that energy into something else because we need to be able to express it. And I want to encourage my children, I want to reparent myself in a way that allows me to identify what is the genuine emotion that's being elicited by this environmental experience.
I don't know that I disagree. I was distracted by thinking about something else.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mutual friend, Mike
Mm-hmm.
Norton.
Mm-hmm.
Mike.
Oh, good. Yeah,
slams
name
me.
Out there.
Mike slams me all the time.
Yeah.
He makes fun of me. He cuts me down. But the underlying source of it is his affection
Mm-hmm.
and his appreciation, respect for me. So when we dance that dance with each other, and I do similar things to him, it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not somebody that I respect or care about, and they make that
Mm-hmm.
kind of behavior or observation, then I tend to either totally dismiss them as, well, who
Mm-hmm.
the hell are you, or get angry,
Mm-hmm.
which is still a dimension of who in the hell are you.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a relationship of respect or affection or appreciation, and there's some give and take in the relationship, the foundation of being nurtured,
Mm-hmm.
of being cared about, of being affirmed and admired, makes it not only tolerable but enhancing.
And that is the situational appropriateness of the
coming back full circle.
Right,
the
right,
relationship.
right. And so different situations call for different emotional responses.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's absolutely true. So we could really expand on this, and we should
come back and revisit
at some point. But for today's conversation, we got to leave it there. And just for the record, I want to say, since you brought his name up, Mike, I did not break your shoulder. So if you enjoy Psych with Mike, then
just learn how to ski.
Please, rate us on iTunes.
When we ski, we stay on our feet.
Tell some friends to check out the show. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.